The story goes like that. A canoe was ready to go out fishing, and the skipper of the boat was named Tagai. And the one that steered that canoe, his name is Kareg. And there was 6 crews in there, and the day came for them to go out fishing. They were out on the reef in a very hot summer day, and the crew inside there, they feel thirsty. They just drink the water. And the stern skipper, the Kareg, keep on yelling out for Tagai, this crew drinking the water, they never ask you to, you know. And then he came down from the forest, come and lift all the bottles up, empties. He cut a rope, make it a string, and he stringed them, throw them away, overboard. And when they fell on the water, they turned into constellation. These are Usiam, this is Seg, and this is Tagai. The 5 fingers, the 5 star is Tagai, as you see in the Australia flag. Tagai really named in English Southern Cross.
We knew we were doing something great. Of course, at the time, we didn't realize how special it would become. That Tagai State College is an established waypoint in the Torres Strait journey to greater autonomy.
It was the serendipity of leadership that was brought together by people that had a similar view, that had a sense of purpose, an imagination and an innovation, and an incredible drive to achieve what could have been seen as the impossible dream.
Probably is one of the most remote parts of Australia, and nowhere else probably in the world. There are 17 schools across 40,000 square kilometres of water.
How do you amalgamate 17 campuses? 16 of those campuses are primary, one's a high school, but we're all separated by water. We've got 2 ancestral languages that really need to be valued. We've got every campus that needs their own individual identity.
It was 1985 when Education Queensland took over responsibility for the schools across the Torres Strait. Between 1985 and 1991, state education services were expanded from Thursday Island to 16 state schools and 1 secondary school across 15 islands.
When Education Queensland took over the education of students and that up in the Torres Strait, I requested as a transfer to come up and be the principal. So they put me at Coconut Island. The Coconut Island school that I was in there for a year and a half was basically it was a tin shed. Inside there was myself up one end, and then up the other end I had 2 Coconut Island teachers, Eldridge Mosby and Mary Mosby, husband and wife. No air conditioning. But in the old school at Coconut and even at Yam, there was a beautiful breeze.
Four years prior to Education Queensland assuming responsibility of schools across the Torres Strait, community members had already been active in their advocacy for raising education standards in the Torres Strait by forming CIREC, the Torres Strait Island Regional Education Council.
Looking at that period of time from 1986 to 2006, 20 odd years, you've got to gauge, the investment in education, and more importantly, how the department delivered its services in such a way to meet, this unique setting. And of course, the most important thing, how you measure, achievement levels. How effective are you delivering? If you look at the late 90s and into the early 2000s, that's where you have, I guess, enough systems and processes in place where you could start to pick things and associate those things with, what were the contributing factors. And it soon became obvious that we did not have in place an effective framework or an effective model that was delivering the sort of quality education that was required.
The community and parents knew that their students were smart, yet the outcomes, student learning outcomes that were being attained was not as high to reflect this.
My first 6 years at Bardu, we had 3 different principals. Each of those people came with best intentions, of course, but very little induction. They didn't know a lot about the island, the culture, what to expect when they got here.
The community identified that the high turnover in leadership positions in their community was having a huge impact on students' learning outcomes, and as a result wanted some changes being made to the systems in order to accommodate or deal with the problems that were arising because of the high turnover in leadership.
And it soon became obvious that having, 17 campuses all operating on their own was not a workable model. Don Anderson, at this point in time, had just accepted an acting position in the region. He was the Executive Director of Schools for the Torres Strait. Donnie, of course, was someone that brought vast amount of experience working in remote schools, working with Indigenous groups. And more importantly, I think Don had just gone through a lengthy period of time putting together Western Cape College.
The significance of Western Cape College is the CEO of Rio Tinto came up with the idea of Western Cape College. He'd seen it in other parts of the world where a cluster of schools had come together and worked effectively, and challenged Don and myself to look at bringing those schools together. And Don did that, and did that very effectively. And we therefore had a model that we could see that we could take possibly to the Torres Strait, where clearly a much more significant range of problems existed, but of similar ilk. The challenge then becomes, how do you engage the community that is 17 schools in a conversation about you're going to be better as one school?
It was a very special time. We had SORIC well established and had been very capably led by the chairman, Ned David, for a long time. We had an Indigenous leadership team that were exceptional. Steph Savage, Judy Ketchell, Steve Foster. My recollection also is that we had support by the Minister for Education and the Director General of at that time. It was Ken Smith, the Director General, and Anna Bligh as the Minister. So from all levels of supply and demand and community, it was an opportunity to do something different.
The department released a white paper in 2005 called Bound for Success. We instantly resisted this idea and on the basis that the department, in its haste, had once again lumped both, mainland Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders into this one sort of size-fits-all type approach. So we called and we stated our total resistance to the idea and said, this ain't happening. We want to negotiate something that we believe meets, the unique context of the Torres Strait. Hence, Bound for Success, Torres Strait. Within that negotiation, interestingly enough, we spent some time talking about Action 11. And Action 11 is where the college sits.
Because I'd just recently been at Western Cape College and I was used to the concept of a group principal or executive principal in clusters, we're actually looking at the concept of maybe top Western and Central and Western and Eastern Islands where traditionally the sort of grouping would occur. But the concept was put forward to be more courageous than that and make the Torres Strait Nation into one school. And so that proposal was put forward, and we set out to sell the concept to community, or at least to see if we could get buy-in from community.
The actual process itself, going out, engaging with community, I can say that people talk about this process under the theme of a consultation. I can tell you it wasn't. This was not consultation. This was not going out and asking people for their opinion. No. We went out and spoke to communities about the issues that we were having and what we believed were the answers to the issues. We were out there for people to give us their support, their affirmation, and I think more importantly, this Torres Strait regional sort of imprimatur.
I have a lasting memory of a Torres Strait Island elder, Ate Walter Nona from Bardo Island, saying this at a public forum: if you know that forming a college will bring about better education and successful futures for our students, stop talking about it, let's just do it and make it happen.
We got the imprimatur from, the one individual that could basically give it. Uncle Walter Nona, At the end of that meeting in Bardo, got up and said, enough talking, let's go ahead and do it.
The last school we went to was Horn Island, was my recollection, and I remember planning for the meeting in the library, and in my head we had something really special in place. We had two really great people who'd make the executive principal of Tagai College. Judy Ketchell and Steve Foster, both outstanding candidates to be running the college, and Steve and Judy both came to me that morning and said, no, we don't want to take on the role yet. And at that stage, there had been such positive buy-in and we had such belief in it ourselves that I spoke of Ross and volunteered to go in as executive principal, if that was okay, because the product had been, the concept had been bought by community, and we believed in it, and we wanted it to happen.
Having gained the support of the department and the community, the college was officially about to become a reality. But first, it had to have a name, and it couldn't be just any name. It had to be something that would be inclusive of all language groups, all clan groups, and all island communities. Basically, the name had to be something that every single Torres Strait Islander could identify with. No easy task.
I ran that process of finding the name for the college, which included some people that are no longer with us. The George Mize, Walter Nona, Joseph Wazaga, people who, assembled in my little office. There's no aircon back then, but everyone gathered around to have a conversation around what's the appropriate name for a college that would unite the islands. And we did the right thing by everyone. We got those elders into a conversation, got a panel together. Uncle Walter Nona, made a pitch for Tagai. It ticked all the boxes.
The Tagai is named for the college is, for me, is well meaning for the children to school, to have the education in school, to pay attention instead of doing things themselves.
I get a phone call, probably from Don, I suspect, that the name came through, Tagai, and I'm sitting at my desk in Cairns saying, Tagai? What on earth is that? Tagai School, Tagai College, that doesn't work. Then, of course, I got the background to Tagai. Perfect.
With regard to the logo, my role was basically to steer things along and make sure that everyone had their say and had a chance to discuss their rationale behind why they might have chosen one of the specific designs of them. I think that it was a wonderful way of getting everyone together to talk about something like the college's system that is needed to represent the whole Torres Strait. So it was good to talk through that and get everyone to be comfortable and understand that it actually, that constellation was represented and recognised by all Torres Strait Islanders.
With the foundations of the college in place, there now existed an even bigger opportunity, the chance to educate the children of the Torres Strait in a new way, a way that spoke directly to them, a way that they would understand and intuitively embrace. This became known as the Yumi Way.
The vision for Tagai State College is navigating Yumi to a successful future. And I guess what that means is we want to make our students two-way proud of their identity and their culture and who they are, but also proud that they can achieve the same standard of education at this college as any other school in Queensland. How we do that will be different, and it will be the Yumi Way.
The Yumi education for, as I see it, is always been about how we do things in the Torres Strait and how we do it our way, that fits into the language, fits into our traditions, fits into our values, fits into our way of life, and the schools need to adapt to that.
One of the things that we were very, very committed to and absolutely front and centre of our minds was about this identity of the college and making sure that everything that we did within the college was absolutely the Yumi Way and was absolutely founded on the principles and the values that belong and owned by the Torres Strait Nation.
I remember once getting a phone call from regional office. Someone there wanted to know what this yummy education was all about. So I was tasked with writing a clear definition of Yumi education. I interviewed each of the executive members individually and asked them each to tell me what Yumi education means. The two sentences that came out of those hours of discussions still form the definition of Yumi education on Tagai's website.
Part of the amalgamation was ensuring that we had high expectations in our college, and that wasn't always guaranteed. So what we had to design was a model for delivering the services, the education services in every one of our classrooms. This is more about a culture shift, moving from low expectations to high expectations. So what we did, we designed a model called the Service Guarantee. And basically that outlined that we were committed to delivering a high quality teaching and learning service in every one of our classrooms. Now, it didn't mean we could guarantee the outcomes, but it did guarantee that the service that we were going to provide was no longer based on just crossing our fingers and hoping for the best, but aiming for a high quality teaching standard.
The service guarantee was a concept that Don Anderson brought about ensuring that we had an absolute belief in the kids' success at the college. And it was about to change the mindsets, I think, of the community, of our staff, of the kids, about what was actually possible. And what effectively happened was all of a sudden there was absolute clarity in what needed to happen. It was not okay for a kid to leave the school without being on that clear pathway to uni, to TAFE for a traineeship or to employment. And all of a sudden we put all our resources and attention and effort directly into that. Some of the changes we saw in those early years was Craig Wittred going up and leading Tagai TAFE, and we had that whole group of students go across up to the TAFE, which was their chosen pathway, and all of a sudden students that weren't successful had a very, very clear direction and started kicking really big goals.
Well, at that time I was at the high school, and the TAFE actually became on the back of Tagai becoming a college. Probably if we didn't become Tagai State College, then our connection and memorandums of understanding, etc., with the TAFE probably wouldn't have happened, because then we decided, to amalgamate into different things, work on different levels, sharing of resources, and that theme, the sharing of resources, has come right through. It's a better use of resources was one of the main driving points, really.
Looking beyond the immediately achievable outcomes is what Tagai was based on. I think that's why Don and Ned worked so well together, was because Don wasn't scared to go against what was considered to be general state government responsibility, and Ned wanted more to happen in his communities.
We've now got the community sort of saying, well, that's fine, we absolutely endorse that because we demand a world-class education. We demand that our kids can excel in English. We demand that our kids will leave our schools capable of being doctors, engineers, coxswains on boats. But we also demand that they be proud and be knowledgeable of their culture. So because we've now got one unity, I can stand up to a community and say, yes, Tagai commits that we will have traditional languages taught in your school. Yes, Tagai commits that we will have cultural heritage there. Tagai commits we will have traditional arts, the dance, the theatre, the oral histories. I can stand there and be held personally accountable. Every person can sort of say, well, Don Anderson, you said that. You're the principal of Tagai College, you're accountable for it, and it's true. It's a very special opportunity to have that unity and the authority to actually make the decisions. Thank goodness I'm backed up by an awful lot of very capable people who've got more skills than I in lots of areas. It's a unique structure and a unique opportunity. Another one which I think was really critical in was again on Badu, when an elder said, you say that culture matters and that literacy and numeracy matters. You've got millions of dollars, huge organisation, huge staff, huge bureaucracy, and you provide literacy and numeracy. We send our kids to school and do that. And then you say, yeah, culture matters, but that's community business. Well, community, we haven't got a lot of money, we've got no resources, no bureaucracy. I think it's about time that you played fair with us and actually put some commitment into language and cultural programs, and you showed some respect to it instead of giving lip service to it as saying it matters. I think that was a really powerful story that I have as a reflection that I think it galvanised that culture and the language programs has always been pivotal to the Yumi way and the very essence of Tagai College.
One of the biggest issues initially was about how were we going to resource this? What did we need by way of workforce capability, cultural experts? We did what we needed to do, and the college funded some very strategic positions by engaging a linguist and cultural advisors that would form this team to work with myself to embark upon this journey. So the consultations that we undertook brought that sense of ownership and commitment to support in whatever way they could to get this off the ground. Having said that, we didn't have that same support, I guess, from the system, simply because Torres Strait languages, we don't do Torres Strait languages, we do French, we do other languages, but we were talking about approaching language and culture as not a curriculum as such, but as a life's education, an education for life.
Immersion program was first designed, to my knowledge, in Hawaii and carried on successfully by the New Zealand. And then we finally jumped aboard and took that into Torres Strait after they were allowed, the Australian schools were, or even in the North Queensland, was allowed to use Indigenous languages to be taught in classrooms. And Mr. Oba, who was a linguist in Torres Strait Islander languages, came up with the immersion program to be taught in Torres Strait classrooms. And the process is very simple in form of when children enter the classroom, say for 45 minutes, the language of instruction is the target language, which is, for an example, could be KKY, until the children exit out the door. And no English is uttered for that 45 minutes. And that's an immersion program. All right, now name Mr. Waya. Kita Mr. Waya.
Mr. Waya.
Kapubiga migina kazi.
Kapubiga Mr. Waya.
Eso.
Every instructions is said full-on traditional language. And I tell you, it's very, very emotional. And when I talk about it, it really touched me, like, if only we had that long ago. But this program now coming, it's all good for the next generations. Cross your fingers, they'll be fluent speakers.
You can just see when you go to those campuses where it's being done well, the pride that the communities have in the fact that their language they're playing a part in their language being rejuvenated, and the college is basically facilitating that.
When this language program first started, I got to give acknowledgement back and thank and everything back to Uncle Dimple, who is no longer with us. I think one of his aim was to make sure that it goes right through the high school. We hope we're going to carry his legacy on this language thing.
I grew up in a home that was speaking languages, and that was my education. And I was just, in the middle of it all. And when I, came to my senses, when I grew older, I just realized that I knew what I was speaking, and I just didn't know how I learned it, but just through hearing, everything happening at your home. Whereas today, those are things that are not happening in homes anymore. And so my father did that research, and today we're using his spelling system and everything that he's done in the 6 years, and it's working now today for our children to see.
As with any new idea, success lies with consistency, and that must come from strong and consistent leadership. And in the case of Tagai State College, Indigenous leadership.
So Don Anderson, who's the inaugural principal, had to go about designing an organisational structure that would be able to deliver this high quality education across all of the campuses. There's no other organisational structure like ours, I believe, across Australia. So the organisational structure had to have an executive team. And inclusive on that executive team, we had to have Mr. Ned David, who is the chair of CIREC, to be there, not just symbolically, but to say that it would filter down and all of our recruitment for our workforce. So, for example, for every one of our leaders that we recruit to come into the college, there's a community rep that sits on that panel to help make that decision.
Indigenous leadership was actually absolutely vital to get this all happening here at Tagai, because the Yumi way and the community acceptance, community involvement, with the leadership being Indigenous, I believe there's more of a trust involved. We're leading ourselves, taking ownership amongst the community itself. It's going to be our education here in the Torres Strait from an Indigenous viewpoint, and that's the key part, really.
I believe Indigenous leadership is important for the success of Tagai because we know what our people need.
Indigenous leadership is integral to the success of Tagai State College. In every site, within being our school, within our community, whether it be our young students coming up through primary into secondary education, we have young, strong or Indigenous leaders that are driving the agenda for Indigenous education, leaders that are committing to the future betterment of Indigenous people. At Tagai State College, we see Indigenous education front and centre of our core business, and also providing a platform for leadership development for our staff, our Indigenous leaders as part of our growing our own strategy, as well as our students, in making sure our students are engaged in leadership opportunities because they will be the future leaders of the Torres Strait.
For the majority of our Indigenous leaders, they've remained a constant over time. They're the ones who've remained in our communities and not only understand the communities but also the cultural protocols and the networking that's been there, and they understand the families and the students and where they're from and their belonging.
I think just the fact that we've still been able to maintain 4 of the original executive members when we first began in 2007 has meant that there's been that one sustainability, 2 that continuity, and the relationship that we have not just with each other, but the relationship that we've been able to form with our parents and our community has been something that is a blessing. It's an enhancement.
I was the only non-Indigenous person of the team, and it was, and I certainly wasn't needed for my skill sets or knowledge, and so it was, and I thought, considered extremely important. Not only would Torres Strait Islanders be running the school for their nation, that they would be seen to be running their school for the nation.
One of the first challenges that we took on was the branding of Tagai State College. So if our area of excellence was Torres Strait Arts, Language and Culture, then we better make sure that it's embedded not only in our operations but also into our curriculum. So for example, the names of our campuses, some of them were still in English, using English names. Each community went through consultations, endorsed it at their P&C Association meetings to change to all traditional names and align them to the traditional languages of the area. So this was a significant step in terms of changing the culture and that branding for Tagai State College and what we stood for. One of the visible areas of improvement or achievement has been around facilities. So 1985 is when the department took over the schools in the Torres Strait. So leading into the amalgamation, some of our facilities, our classrooms are looking very tired, dilapidated. One of the most significant new buildings that's been constructed in the Torres Strait has been the building of the new school at Mare. Now this was a lengthy consultation period, and the work that Steve Foster and Ed O'Rourke have produced this outstanding model of a school that's catered for many, many students and the community. Other facilities have been important, as I mentioned before, the Land and Sea Discovery Centre, where we've got a hub that makes those resources for students, and we've got a Language and Culture Centre. Some of the other centres that have been upgraded, like the admin block at the high school, have been invaluable in sending the message that this is a quality education being delivered here at this campus.
Prior to the college being formed, a lot of the resources that were attracted to the school was not necessarily being targeted towards student learning outcomes. But now as a college, we've been able to pool the resources that we attract across 17 campuses, look at the college priorities and the needs of the students, and target those resources where they should be to enhance the student learning outcomes of all students across our college.
The support also that's come from the college, that's a really big change. So we have the student services, which is a very large part of the college, supporting each of the campuses. And so we know that our students who need the extra support are getting the support that they're entitled to, being part of Education Queensland.
When I started working at Tagai State College in 2008, the facilities on Thursday Island were at the primary school were new. They were 1 or 2 years old. So we had a really good building here on TI. But I guess what has changed over time is that one child at Yam Island doesn't accrue enough funding for their needs to provide them with a huge amount of support. But when we're working as a college, we're putting all of those resources together and distributing them. That includes expertise, which then enables us to support all of the kids that we work with. In 2016, the Student Services team were nominated for a National Disability Award. At the end of 2016, Stephanie Savage and myself went down to Canberra, and we were absolutely blown away by the fact that we won. We won the category for education and training. We were very proud of ourselves.
Every school in Queensland, school performance is judged on the Year 3, 5, 7 testing, NAPLAN testing, as well as the Year 12 results, QCE results. It wasn't until 2008 that our first group of students graduated with the QCE, and we learnt pretty quickly that our systems in place in the senior school weren't designed to that service guarantee to make sure that every student graduated with their QCE. We established some systems, and a couple of years later we started producing the 100% every year in a row, 100% completion rate. This to us, one, honoured the service guarantee that we had established, but also our commitment to our communities about a quality education for students in Year 12.
The biggest change that was really immediate with Tagai was the success of the students. Within a very short period of time, we went from achievement rates, for example, in certificate courses of 20 or 30% up to well over 90, and I know it's at 100% now. And we're looking not at just at Certificate 1, there was increases in Cert 2, in Cert 3 offerings. The OP scores of students, we had more kids wanting to achieve university standards, there were more kids to going directly into work.
The college now gives direction to the principals or the heads of campuses that are now situated at each campus, and has got us all moving in the same direction. I've seen a lot of changes, a lot of other changes over that time. Probably the most important and the biggest change is just the actual standards, academic standards of the kids. When I first came to Bardu in grade 1, we were teaching kids colours and hoping that they'd be able to write their name partway through the year. We didn't think that, and we very rarely got kids to actually be reading in Year 1. That actually came in Year 2. Now we have our target of level 15 students in Year 1 are actually achieving that. Some are going beyond that. So the standards have just skyrocketed.
Both NAPLAN data and QCE results back up this improvement in student performance throughout the college. Students are improving and achieving their goals.
So I'm a former student of Tagai State College, and my schooling, in reflection, I always thought it was quite normal until I moved away and met people and told them about my lifestyle and what we studied and how we sort of went about like life up here and just getting to school in general. And they're always shocked and amazed to hear my story.
That's where I live, over on Prince of Wales, Moorlag Beach. To get to school in the morning, I have to catch a ferry. And in the wet season, it's harder, you get wet.
But I absolutely loved going to school up here. My parents were quite adamant that they didn't want to send me away for boarding school, and I thank them for that. I think up here, just having that balance with family and then with culture and then, you know, with schooling as well, I just think I had the best of both worlds. So yeah, I really enjoyed my schooling. I guess in my senior year, I applied for university. I knew that that's what I wanted to do, and I was actually accepted into a few different courses, but I chose to do marketing, and I chose to go to the Queensland University of Technology in Brisbane. So I studied a Bachelor of Mass Communication with majors in advertising and media and communication.
Another great aspect of the Tagai State College system was the opportunity to offer courses in the senior school that were directly relevant to students' lives.
So the establishment of the Discovery Centre based at the high school helped to develop an aquaculture facility. From this, a course for students going into senior schooling, Certificate 2 Land and Sea Management, had that in place since 2014. Very, very successful completion rate. So every one of those students that take that course complete 100%. A good partnership with Maritime Safety, where our students are going into courses and completing their coxswain certificate. The programs at the Land and Sea Area of Excellence offered were boat safe programs for students, turtle tagging programs, and other marine conservation camps for many, many students across some of our outer islands as well.
As it evolved, Tagai was leading the region. The influence that Tagai had on the delivery of a service guarantee within Far North Queensland region. Then we also looked at explicit teaching. Montessori came into the early years. Systems leadership as the leadership pedagogy to drive our practice. In 2007 and in the 5 years that I was there, Tagai was pioneering a whole range of areas which to this day I'm using in my own school.
With the education model in place and working from grade 1 to graduation, a bold idea was floated. Why not take responsibility from the cradle to employment?
So back in 2009, one day, our founding executive principal, Don Anderson, came up to me and approached me and said, "Hey Steph, I think there's something that you really, really like that you should check out." He said, "How about you go down to Melbourne and meet up with Kay Bolden and go and see what it's all about." So I met up with Ned and with Kay Bolden, went off to visit a school, and we arrived there and were shown to these two seats where both Kay and I sat down. I thought at first, this seems very clinical, because one, it was very quiet. You didn't have the busyness and the general hub that you do have when you go into a classroom. And two, I didn't see things hanging off the wall like you would see in a classroom that I was used to being in. Not much sort of stimulus on the walls as such, but what really, really caught my attention was the fact that you had children who were moving around in the space, who were engaged in learning, but were moving around in an orderly, respectful manner, and that the environment was really clean and pristine, and the things on the shelves were very beautiful. So I guess initially it was about making sure that we spoke to the right people, parents and community, and consulted. And then, began the think tank around how we're going to sort of step this out. So we kicked off with a 3 to 6 program, which was for children who were of 4 year and a half year old. Well, we've still got our 2 3 to 6 environments for our 3.5 and 4.5 year old children on Thursday Island, but we also have introduced the Straight Start program, which is the 0 to 3 for our babies to the 3-year-olds, and that's a parent and babies program, and that's been something that we're very proud of now, has extended not just here on Thursday Island but to the outer islands as well. It's been very well embraced by the community, and community and parents absolutely see the value in getting children prepared at an early age.
We recognised early on that there are many, many students in our college that have natural sporting abilities and talents. So we created a hub, an area, it's not an area of excellence, but we had an initiative that promoted sporting participation but also sporting excellence. And from that, Mr. Dave Bell, who's the leader of leading this sporting initiative, has managed to support students to achieve not only local, peninsular, but state, national titles, as well as give students, the opportunity to play different sorts of sports as well. So we have the areas of volleyball, basketball, football, but other sports such as hockey, where students might not have that opportunity like other students do on the mainland. It was about participation and giving students a diverse spread of different sporting areas.
The kids in the Torres Strait really grow up in an environment where sport is really important. Even on small islands that don't really have a lot of sporting facilities, there's always touch games, on the beach or whatever. So there's lots of senior sporting carnivals. So the kids grow up with that, seeing that around them, and sport really does become a big part of their life. And of course, they just have a natural ability. And many of our kids are good not only at one sport but several sports. And so by the time they get to grade 12, they're accomplished in several sports. And it really does open up a lot of opportunities for students with that talent.
While the college at this stage had the systems and philosophy in place, it became extremely important that teaching staff shared the college's aspirations. The teachers coming to Tagai had to be prepared to immerse themselves in the culture and philosophy of the Yumi way.
Another big change I've seen is the induction and so the preparedness of our staff who come in to teach at each of our campuses.
Every one of our teachers we recruit face to face now. We go down to Brisbane, Sunshine Coast, Gold Coast to recruit some of the best teachers down there to come back for our college. So symbolically, but also embedded in everything we do in our workforce, it was about community having that say in the selection, but also, again, honouring that cultural integrity of everything that we do and doing it the Yumi way.
So we end up with a very willing and eager pool of people that want to come into the college for the next year. We then work our way through interviewing each one of those people individually, and at the end of the interview I have a good impression of what the teacher is like. Conversely, they have a lot of good realistic information about what to expect.
The college puts a lot of effort and time into induction for our new teachers and our new heads of campuses. So when these people arrive out on the islands, if they are from not from the Torres Strait, they've got a much better idea of what to expect. They also have a bit of an idea around protocols, a bit of an idea around expectations, around living in the communities and the culture in general. So this means that they can hit the ground running, so to speak.
There is a very strong sense of pride in creating an education model that probably hasn't been done before and pioneering Yumi education. There's also a strong sense of synergy, and we use this saying often, it takes a whole community to educate our children. Well, it feels like the whole community and we're all doing this together. There's also a sense of responsibility. Our languages are endangered. So we've taken the responsibility of making sure that every one of our children are learning their ancestral languages in the classroom.
As a parent, I believe the education standard of Tagai is definitely first class and second to none.
The work that started at Tagai State College has certainly now been seen as great practice across the region. It's certainly gone across the state as well.
For the next 10 years, I'd like to see more opportunities for our kids to travel overseas, sharing their language and culture.
Whilst the college still have challenges after 10 years of operation, the college has come a very long way in areas of improvement, such as accountability, effective use of resources, finance, curriculum development, infrastructure, staff recruitment and training, Indigenous leadership, community engagement, and most importantly, student learning outcomes. collectively, we can all be very, very proud.
The next 10 years, I wouldn't put a marker on where I think we perhaps could be. I think our growth has been exponential, and I think it's because of the work that's been done in the foundation of building our college. There is no one way. There is no one way for us to deliver education, and you can see that if you go out to any of our 17 schools. You'll see education and service delivery that is contextual, taking the needs of that community, but at the same time ensuring that consistent quality and high quality across the whole college.
What a journey it's been. It's been an absolute privilege to reach a milestone that once upon a time was just a dream. But it's very special to know that we've come this far with our communities and our families and our staff and our students who have believed in this concept of Tagai State College, in a brand of education that we could design that would be right for this context.
An Indigenous school, been run for Yumi Way by Islanders for the Torres Strait Nation. I just think I don't really understand why Australia doesn't celebrate it even more so, and I just look forward to Tagai having its greater role across Australia and the Pacific in the years to come.
And in closing, a sense of keeping the fire burning for the next generation of leaders at Tagai State College to stay this course, navigating Yumi to a successful future.